Our troops also received the first serially produced, somewhat heavy ballistic missiles. Soon, we will show them to you on their combat alert duty in the areas of their deployment. Efforts to develop several other new weapons systems continue. And we are expecting to hear even more about the achievements of our researchers and weapons manufacturers. Russia is ready for dialogue with the United States on issues of strategic stability. However, it is important to clarify that in this case we are dealing with a state whose ruling circles are taking openly hostile actions towards us. So, they seriously intend to discuss strategic security issues with us while simultaneously trying to inflict strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. As they themselves say, here is a good example of their hypocrisy. They have recently made unfounded allegations, in particular against Russia, regarding plans to deploy nuclear weapons in space. Such fake narratives, and this story is unequivocally false, are designed to involve us in negotiations on their conditions, which will only benefit the United States. At the same time, they have blocked our proposal, which has been on the table for over 15 years. I am referring to the agreement on preventing the deployment of weapons in outer space, which we drafted back in 2008. There has been zero reaction to it. It is totally unclear what they are talking about. Therefore, there are reasons to suspect that the current US administration's professed interest in discussing strategic stability with us is merely demagoguery. They simply want to show to their citizens and the world, especially in the lead-up to the presidential election, that they continue to rule the world, that they would talk with the Russians when it will benefit them, and that there is nothing to talk about, and they will try to inflict defeat on us otherwise. Business as usual, as they say, but this is unacceptable. Of course, our position is clear. If you want to discuss security and stability issues that are critical for the entire planet, this must be done as a package including, of course, all aspects that have to do with our national interests and have a direct bearing on the security of our country, the security of Russia. We are also aware of the Western attempts to draw us into an arms race, thereby exhausting us, mirroring the strategy they successfully employed with the Soviet Union in the 1980s. Let me remind you that in 1981 to 1988, the Soviet Union's military spending amounted to 13% of GDP. Our current imperative is to bolster our defense industry in such a way as to increase our country's scientific, technological and industrial capabilities. We must allocate resources as judiciously as possible, fostering an efficient economy for the armed forces and maximizing the return on each ruble of our defense spending. It is crucial for us to expedite the resolution of social, demographic, infrastructural and other problems we face while simultaneously advancing the quality of equipment for the Russian Army and Navy. This primarily applies to general-purpose forces, refining the principles of their organization and deploying advanced unmanned strike systems, systems of air defense and electronic warfare, reconnaissance and communications, high-precision weapons and other types of weapons to the troops. We need to shore up the forces in the Western strategic theater in order to counteract the threats posed by NATO's further eastward expansion. With Sweden and Finland joining the alliance, the West has provoked conflicts in Ukraine, the Middle East, and other regions around the world while consistently propagating falsehoods. Now they have the audacity to say that Russia harbors intentions of attacking Europe. Can you believe it? We all know that their claims are utterly baseless, and at the same time, they are selecting targets to strike on our territory and contemplating the most efficient means of destruction. Now they have started talking about the possibility of deploying NATO military contingents to Ukraine. But we remember what happened to those who sent their contingents to the territory of our country once before. Today, any potential aggressors will face far graver consequences. They must grasp that we also have weapons, yes, they know this, as I have just said, capable of striking targets on their territory. Everything they are inventing now, spooking the world with the threat of a conflict involving nuclear weapons, which potentially means the end of civilization. Don't they realize this? The problem is that these are people who have never faced profound adversity. They have no conception of the horrors of war. Even the younger generation of Russians have endured such trials during the fight against international terrorism in the Caucasus, and now in the conflict in Ukraine. But they continue to think of this as a kind of action cartoon. Indeed, just like any other ideology promoting racism, national superiority, or exceptionalism. Russophobia is blinding and stupefying. The United States and its satellites have, in fact, dismantled the European security system, which has created risks for everyone. Clearly, a new equal and indivisible security framework must be created in Eurasia in the foreseeable future. We are ready for a substantive discussion on this subject with all countries and associations that may be interested in it. At the same time, I would like to reiterate I think this is important for everyone, that no enduring international order is possible without a strong and sovereign Russia. We strive to unite the global majority's efforts to respond to international challenges, such as turbulent transformation of the world economy, trade, finance, and technology markets, when former monopolies and stereotypes associated with them are collapsing. Support for families with children is our fundamental moral choice. A multi-child family must become a norm, the underlying social philosophy, and the focus of state strategy. I join your applause. We must ensure sustainable growth in the birth rate within the next 6 years. With this aim in view, we will make additional decisions regarding the education system as well as regional and economic development. I will speak about supporting families and improving the quality of their lives in nearly all parts of the address. Please bear with me, for I have barely started. Everything I have already said is important too, but now I will speak about the most important issues. I will begin with a major issue, to put it mildly, which is the low incomes experienced by many large families. In 2000, more than 42 million Russians lived below the poverty line, but the situation has changed dramatically since then. As of the end of last year, the number of people living below the poverty line declined to 13.5 million, which is also a lot, but we are constantly focused on finding a solution to this problem. A number of measures have been adopted relatively recently. For example, a single monthly allowance for low-income families was introduced on January 1, 2023. It is payable from the time a mother becomes pregnant until the child reaches 17 years of age. Last year, more than 11 million people received it. We have drastically simplified the procedure for concluding a social contract, prioritizing large families. Now, an application for a social contract can be submitted through the Gosislugi Government Services website with a minimum set of documents. We will work to expand the availability of this service, which will require extra funding to the tune of 100 billion rubles. This money has already been set aside. In general, all the additional spending I am going to mention has been budgeted. To reiterate, poverty remains an acute problem which now directly affects more than 9% of the population. According to experts, the poverty rate among families with many children is about 30%. We must set clear goals and consistently achieve them. By 2030, the overall poverty rate in Russia must be below 7%, and for large families, it must be no more than 12%. Or less than half of today's 30%. That is, we must place special emphasis on the effort to reduce poverty, first and foremost for families with many children. I know that overcoming poverty is not easy, and is an absolutely systemic and multi-vector effort, so, to reiterate, it is important to make sure that everything we do in this area and every tool we use is effective and efficient and produces tangible real results for our people and our families. What we need is an uninterrupted effort aimed at improving the quality of life of families with children and supporting the birth rate. To achieve this goal, we will launch a new national project titled Family,